Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justin Charlton-Jones. I'm the Managing Director of Action. And we're going to talk today about how you can double your profits in your business. I'm recording the session. Please do ask questions as we go along. Don't save them up until we get to the end of the webinar. I'd much rather deal with questions as they come up. And quite often, if you've got a question, I imagine that several other people might be thinking the same thing. So, first of all, thank you for giving up your time today. Time is one of the most valuable assets in your business. In fact, it's the most valuable asset in your life because it's one of the few things in the world that we cannot buy any more of. We should always be thinking about whether we're using our time wisely or not. How you invest your time is one of the keys to your success in business. However, we're not talking about time management today. That's actually a webinar I'm running on the 21st of April. Today, we're going to, as I said, talk about some of the simplest, easiest, and quickest ways to increase your revenue and create more profit in your business. So obviously, when people talk about creating more profit in their business, frequently they talk about cutting costs. It's an obvious thing. It's probably one of the areas that it's easiest for you to get a grip on and easiest for you to take action on. But how much more profit could you make this year in your business just by slashing all the expenses? 2%, 5%, 10%. If you're really lucky, maybe a little bit more than that. But if you're running a reasonably effective and efficient business at the moment, frankly, a 5% improvement is probably the most that you can hope for. What I'm going to talk to you about today is how to grow the profit in your business, not by cutting costs, but by acquiring more clients. Before we get on to that, I'm just briefly going to touch on what I call the point of power. And the reason I'm talking about this is because you, as the people who run your own businesses, you are the most important asset in your business. If you are not firing on all cylinders, if you can't do the things that need to be done, then your business will suffer and it will not grow in the way that you want it to. So the point of power is about your state of mind. When you are in a negative state of mind, we call it being below the point of power. And typically, we use the acronym BED to describe the sorts of feelings, attitudes, and behaviors that you might experience when you're in a negative state of mind. You might be in denial about certain things, ignoring them and hoping that they might go away. You might be making excuses for why other things or other people are preventing you from doing what needs to be done. You might be blaming other people. It's unlikely you'll be blaming yourself. And the reason we talk about the point of power is because you need to know where you are relative to it. When you are below the point of power, a negative state of mind, you cannot achieve anything. You deprive yourself of the power to do the things that need to be done in the business, or indeed in your personal life. When you are above the point of power, we use the acronym OAR, because you are in a position to take ownership, hold yourself accountable, and the people around you take responsibility for what needs to be done. You can achieve anything when you are above the point of power. And why am I telling you about this? Because you need to develop the ability as a human being, let alone as a business owner, you need to develop the ability to objectively observe your own thoughts and see whether or not they are actually helpful. Or are they disempowering? Because if they are disempowering, you need to get rid of them. You need to start to become more positive. And there are two very simple ways in which you can do this, which are not difficult. The first one is you can just do something small, something that doesn't require a lot of intellectual effort. Find something little on your to-do list and do it, because actions drive motivation and results, not the other way around. Similarly, every time you achieve something, the reason that these things drive motivation is because every time you cross something off your list of things to do, every time you achieve something, your brain rewards you with a hit of dopamine. So start with something really small, get it done, tick it off your list, you'll get a hit of dopamine, you'll feel better, You'll feel motivated and inspired to move on to the next small thing, and gradually you work your way up until you're doing really big things and you find yourself back above the point of power. The other thing you can do quite simply is to take exercise. It is impossible for us to take exercise and not feel positive and enthused afterwards, because the body fills us up with serotonin as a reward. So be aware of your state of mind. And this is probably one of my favorite quotes, certainly in terms of business, but I think actually in terms of life generally. Training and managing your mind is the most important skill you will ever own in terms of happiness and success. So this is why it is crucial for you to be able to observe your own thoughts, decide whether they're helpful or not, and if they're not helpful, get rid of them. Because no thought lives in your head rent-free. If you are experiencing negative thoughts, they will affect your energy, they will affect your ability to generate money, your time, they will create worry, they will impact on your happiness. So be aware, are your thoughts empowering to you or are they not empowering? And if they are not empowering, you need to change them. The voice in your head is either the most powerful performance enhancer in the world or the most disempowering. So let's get back to the topic we are talking about today, growing profit in your business. What is a successful business? We define a successful business as a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. And there are a number of reasons why ultimately this is what you should be aiming for in your business. The first one is that if you create a business that works without you, you will enjoy it more. You will have so much more fun running a business where you get to choose what it is that you do, because the things that you don't want to do, other people are doing for you. You might decide to get a general manager in to help you with the day-to-day admin of the business while you focus on the thing you're really good at or the thing that you love doing. The other thing about creating a business that works without you is that in order for it to work without you, you will put in place processes and systems. You will create a team of people, which actually not only makes the business more fun for everybody to work in, it adds value. If you want to sell your business at some point in the future, it will have twice as much, if not 3 times as much value if you do not work in it on a daily basis, if you pick and choose what you do. So that's why creating this commercial profitable enterprise that works without you is so important. It's more fun, it's more profitable, and it creates a more valuable business. Now, we're going to talk a bit about sales and marketing. Some people seem to think that sales and marketing is an expense. And that's very logical, because if you look at your profit and loss account, you'll see that marketing and sales costs appear under overheads as an expense. And yes, marketing campaigns cost money. They cost time as well, which is also an expense, although it doesn't appear directly in your P&L. And the other thing about sales and marketing is, of course, that different tactics, different approaches, different advertising campaigns all have different results. Some work better than others. But actually, sales and marketing is an investment. For every pound that you spend on sales and marketing, you should be generating a positive return on investment. You should have more money coming in than is going out. And in some companies, that absolutely is true. They know where they're spending their money and they know what return they're creating. And as a result, they get more money in for the pounds that they spend. And the reason that they do this, the reason they're able to do it, is very simply because they are measuring and testing the impact of the activities that they're undertaking in terms of sales and marketing. Who on the call today currently measures the impact of their sales and marketing activity? Is anybody doing that? Either put something in the chat or unmute yourself and let me know. Who is measuring the impact of their marketing? Okay, I've got a thumbs up from Adrian. Well done. It's really important that you do this. Here's a very simple thing that you can do straight away. When you get a new inquiry coming into your business, you should record 4 things. The first thing is, how did they hear about you? How did they know to get in touch with you? And if it was a referral, you need to ask them who referred them to you, for the simple reason that you're going to go back and thank that individual for the referral. Because if you thank them, we all love gratitude and praise. If you thank them, they will do it again. And if it was a really valuable referral, if it suddenly generated tens of thousands of pounds worth of work for you, you might want to give them something rather nicer than just a card to say thank you for their referral. Record how people heard about you, because that will help you to understand which of your marketing or sales activities are actually generating leads for you. Record what they're interested in. Which of your products or services do they want? Make an estimate of what that is worth to you. So if they become a client, what roughly is the value of this inquiry? And then finally, keep a record of whether or not they became a client. And if you record these 4 things, you can now immediately start to understand which of your sales and marketing activities create leads in the first place, which generate the most leads overall, which generate leads that perhaps are more interested in one product or service than another, which generates the leads that have the highest potential value to you, and which generates the leads that convert most readily into clients or customers. You need to be doing this, because if you're not doing this in your business right now, you will not understand which of your marketing and sales activities are actually generating a return on investment for you. And if you don't know which ones are generating a return on investment, the temptation is to just stop doing all of them. So before you can start marketing, you need to have a clear proposition, a USP, a unique selling proposition. And we'll come back to discuss the unique aspect in a moment. But if you have a clear definition of what it is that your business does and why it is better than your competitors, something amazing happens. You don't have to compete on price anymore. The only reason that people compete on price is because they have not differentiated their product or their offering over their competitors. So somebody looks at their product, looks at the price and says, okay, it's a bog standard thing. There are 10 other people who also provide this thing. I'll go and ask a few of them what they're going to charge. Once you have a clear USP, you no longer experience price competition, because people are coming to you because of the value that you create. It becomes an investment, not a cost. So, defining your USP, creating your niche effectively. Just one point on this. Before you start to define your USP or create your niche, you need to know who your target audience is. And you may have more than one. You may have 2, 3, 4, even 5 different target audiences for the services or products that you're producing. And you need to be able, if necessary, to create a USP that is particular to each of those different target groups. It might be that actually, although the target groups are different in terms of demographics, actually the message to all of them is the same, in which case that's fantastic. That's nice and simple. So let's get back to creating your unique selling proposition. So the USP is about the benefits that you bring to your customers. It's not about what you actually do. So if somebody asks me, and I go to a lot of sort of events, networking meetings, I meet business owners virtually every day of the week. If somebody says to me, what do you do, Justin? I say, I bring clarity to how businesses are going to grow. I don't say I am a business growth specialist and coach, because that doesn't explain how I help people. It's just a description of my my profession. Your USP is about the benefits that you create for your customers. It's how you make them feel at the end of the day. It's about the consequences of them investing in your services or products. So think about what you can do to create a unique selling proposition. Think about the various different customers that you've got. In particular, if you want to understand what your USP is, have a conversation with your clients. They will tell you why they like working with you, what they love about your product or your services. The whole point about a USP is it's the thing that people take away from your product or service that creates all the benefit for them. So if necessary, ask them. Do some research, read your testimonials, ring them up and ask them what it is that they love about working with you. The other thing is, if you're struggling to identify your USP, you can create a guarantee. I am fairly certain that you do something in your business for your clients which you feel confident that you can deliver every time to all of your clients. If you can deliver it every time, if you're certain that by just focusing on this one thing that you can make it a consistent part of your delivery, why not turn it into a guarantee? How many of your competitors actually have guarantees for their work? It's another great way of differentiating yourself. So I have a guarantee. I say to my customers, I guarantee that I will generate or help them to generate more additional profit in their business than the cost of my coaching fees. And if I don't do that, I will refund the difference. There aren't very many coaches that do that, so it sets me apart. So think about what you do that you can guarantee. And if you can't think of something that you can guarantee, go and ask people. We worked with a roofing contractor a few years ago. He was really struggling to come up with a USP, to know how to differentiate his roofing business from any others. And so we said to him, go and talk to your customers, go and talk to your friends, anybody you know, and ask them, what is it that they would be concerned or worried about if they were thinking about getting a roofer in to do some work on their property? What are the concerns that they might have? And so he went off and he asked lots of people, and he eventually identified there were three things in particular that people were worried about. One was, would they actually turn up on time on the day? Because typically somebody might have had to take a day off work or to change things around in order to be at home, and so they want the person to turn up when they say they're going to turn up. The second thing was the mess that they might make. How are they going to leave their property, their house, their garden at the end of the job? And then the third thing was, were they going to be up on the scaffolding, up on your roof, swearing, shouting at each other, playing the radio very loudly? And so he came up with a guarantee which consisted of three elements. He said, if you decide to work with us, we guarantee three things. We guarantee that we will turn up on the day at the time specified. And if we are late, we will never be more than 15 minutes late. We guarantee that we will leave your property at least as tidy, if not tidier than it was when we first arrived. And we guarantee that there will be no effing, blinding, shouting and loud noises coming from my team on your roof while they're working. And he implemented this guarantee, and he was inundated with work because he had addressed the concerns that people typically had. And so this particular individual had been discounting his prices by up to 25% in order to get work because he couldn't differentiate himself from other roofers. And after doing this, he was able to charge full price and he had a full order book. So think about your guarantee, think about your USP. Now, I mentioned earlier uniqueness. What if there isn't a unique selling point? What if particularly if you work in service industries, it's sometimes very hard to come up with a unique selling proposition because you're selling something that lots of other people sell, and it's quite hard to actually innovate and come up with something within that sector that's completely new. I mean, a classic is accountants and solicitors. How do they differentiate themselves from all the other accountants and solicitors? So the important thing to remember when you're putting together your USP is it does not have to be completely unique. In fact, what it needs to be about primarily is why people should buy from you. As I mentioned earlier, it's about the benefits that your customers experience from working with you. As it says on this chart, a great USP states the essence of your business promise. It's the thing that distinguishes you from the competition. It tells people why they should buy from you, but it doesn't have to be wildly different or creative. It just needs to present your business proposition in a way that resonates with your target audience. So once you understand what your target audience really value in the work that you do for them, that can help you to come up with your USP. At the end of the day, it's a brand promise that tells people why they should work with you rather than your competitors. Now, once you've found this message, once you understand what your USP is, you need to make it short and sweet. You need to, if you're familiar with the phrase, you need to make it into an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is a description of what you do that you can tell somebody in the 15 to 20 seconds between getting into the lift with them at that conference or event that you've been wanting to talk to them at, and then them exiting the elevator because they've reached their floor. So come up with a short, succinct description of the benefits of working with you. And once you've identified your USP, you go on to own it. I don't know how old you all are on that's not true. I know how old some of you are on this webinar today. If I was to say to you, what are Volvo cars known for? Who can put their hands up and tell me? What are Volvo cars known for? I will confess you need to be above a certain age in order to get this. But what are Volvo cars known for? Write it in the chat, shout it out. Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Safety. Volvo cars are known for safety. Now, is a Volvo any safer? You buy a Volvo estate, is it any safer than a Mercedes estate or a BMW or I don't know, a Range Rover or some other large, relatively expensive car? The answer is no, it probably isn't, particularly with all the sort of regulations around car safety that have been introduced over the last 30 or 40 years. But why are Volvo? They're not just known for safety, they own safety as a proposition. The reason is because once they decided that safety was the thing that their target audience valued above all else, that was all that they talked about. I'm very old, and I can remember as a sort of a boy looking at the Sunday supplements that came with the newspapers, and there were always advertisements in there for Volvo cars telling you how safe they were. They used to do these advertisements with crash test dummies in and things like that to demonstrate how safe their cars were. So, were they any safer? Maybe perhaps at the very beginning, but actually it didn't matter whether they were safer or not. The perception was that they were safer because that was all that they talked about. And this is a thing you need to remember with your marketing. Once you've identified what your USP is, talk about it all the time, own it, because I guarantee you, your competitors will not be doing this because they don't know that they need to do it. And even if they do know that they need to do it, they don't have somebody like me telling them to do it week in, week out. So identify your USP, and once you know what it is, that's what you talk about. Just one final point on marketing. We talked about knowing who your target audience is. This is really important. Because if you don't know who your target audience is, you don't know where to find them. You don't know what communication channels, what media you should be using in order to get your message in front of them. So whilst you are working out your USP, you also need to know who your target audiences are. And once you've identified who they are, create a little avatar, create a description of that target audience. So where would you find them? What do they read? Where do they go? Who do they mix with? Because when you know these things, you can start to identify what marketing tactics can actually reach them and put your message in front of them. So let's move on to talk about how you actually make more profit in your business. So when I talk to business owners, most of them can tell me how many customers they've got. Most of them can tell me what their revenue is. A few of them can even tell me how much profit they're making. Although an awful lot of business owners just know what's in the bank at the end of the month and can they make payroll. However, this is just a snapshot of where your business is at the moment. These are just results, and they are not in themselves levers that you can use in order to grow the profit in your business. There are, in fact, only 5 ways to increase the profit in your business. And these are they. So, how many customers you have in your business is a function of how many leads you manage to generate and how well you convert them. That gives you how many customers you have. And in fact, the more astute of you will point out there is another calculation here to total number of customers, which is how many clients you already have and how well you retain them. So leads times conversion rate plus existing customers times retention rate gives you how many customers you have in your business. Your turnover is a function of how many customers you have and how often they buy from you and how much they spend with you on average. That gives you your turnover, and your gross profit is a function of your turnover multiplied by your profit margin. So let me just give you a bit of an example here. Here we have a business. They generate 4,000 leads a year. They have a conversion rate of 25%, so they have 1,000 customers. Each of their customers buys from them twice a year on average, and they spend £100 on average. So they have a turnover of £200,000. They have a 25% profit margin, so they have £50,000 worth of profit. Now, why is this so important? And how can you use it? It's important because of the focus that it creates. Once you understand that these are the only 5 ways to put more profit on your bottom line, you can look at these figures and you can think to yourself, which of these 5 areas, and I would suggest all of them, should I be focusing on? And what can I actually do to each of these 5 areas to generate an improvement? Now, how do we generate more leads? Do we have vouchers, databases, events? Are we using social media or whatever? How well do we convert them? What do we do that assists us in converting people into paying customers? So let's just look at this one example. Let's just suppose that actually 4,000 leads is actually quite low in this sector, this industry. They should be getting more like 5,000 or 6,000 leads. 25% conversion rate sounds really low. What can they do to improve those things? And similarly, how many transactions per year are they actually capable of doing? And can we find a way of getting them to spend more money with us each time? Like I said, it's about focus. So if we look at leads, here are just some examples of different ways in which you can increase the number of leads coming into your business. Do you ask for referrals regularly? We all love referrals because it's the easiest way of getting new customers. They're already warm when they get to you. They're approaching you. You don't have to go and look for them. And the chances are they're going to convert at a very high rate. Companies that rely almost exclusively on referrals usually have something like an 80 to 90% conversion rate, which is fantastic. But do you have a referral strategy? Do you actually consciously go out and make a point of asking for referrals? Do you remind your customers on a regular basis? And do you incentivize them to give you referrals? Strategic partnerships. Who else has connections or contact with your target audiences? For me, the best strategic partnership is an accountant, because accountants have hundreds of small businesses as their clients, hundreds of SMEs, and I want introductions to SMEs. Think about your sector, your business. Who else deals with the sort of customers that you want? Go and talk to them. Find out if you can create a partnership where you refer clients to one another. Advertising. Are you doing any advertising? I know advertising costs money, whereas most of the things on here don't, but sometimes advertising is incredibly effective. But if you're not testing and measuring, you won't know whether that expense is actually generating a return on investment, which is why I go back to that point I made earlier about you must record where your leads and inquiries come from. You must record what they're interested in, how much it's worth to you, and then whether or not they ultimately became a client. Because then you'll know what's working. Social media. How many of you are using social media effectively? And I don't mean just periodically posting, actually having a proper social media strategy, putting video content out there on a regular basis, and actively hunting for new connections, whether that be on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you're using. Your website. Is your website as good as it could be? Does it have lead magnets on it? These pages that people go to where they can download white papers or useful information, but where you collect their contact details. So you've got their name and you've got their email address. Is it optimized for SEO? And even more importantly, in this day and age, is it optimized for AI searches? If you're interested in knowing more about this, let me know, because I can send you a document on how to become the go-to company when somebody types in, who is the best business coach in Buckinghamshire? I hasten to add, I am at the top of the list at the moment. But you will only get there by taking certain actions which are above and beyond the simple SEO for your website. Flyers. Do you do flyers? Do you put them out? Do you run events where people can come and find out about what you do? Do you have a database that you are actively using? In this day and age, you have to have a database. It is the first and most, next to a website, a database and a website are the two most fundamental things you have to have as a business. Because if you've got a database, you can communicate with your customers or with your prospects. You can send them newsletters, you can send them offers, you can tell them about new products, anything as long as it's interesting to them. If it's not interesting, they will unsubscribe. So don't overdo it and tell them stuff that's going to be relevant and interesting. And the simplest way to make it interesting is to tell them something that they don't know already. And then there's telemarketing. It's often a dirty word, but telemarketing is the quickest way to get in touch with prospective clients. And then conversion rates. So do you use scripts, for example, or even a basic checklist so that you don't miss out on certain points that are actually going to be important in terms of how you position your product or your service to your prospective clients? You should be using scripts. Do you train your staff? Have they been trained in how to sell to people? Do they get training in customer service? Having a really strong USP and guarantee, having testimonials. Second best to a referral is having lots of testimonials where somebody can go onto your website, they can look at other marketing activity that you've got going on, and they can see testimonials from people who think that you are wonderful. And that reassures them. Nobody buys anything these days without reading reviews. And it's the same with your business. People are not going to buy from you if they can't find positive reviews about you. In a business where particularly where you're providing a service, a testimonial is the way to do that. Offers and promotions. That's a great way to convert people. An offer if they become a new client, if they offer on their first purchase, or an offer if they sign up for a period of time. So they get a discount over 6 months or 12 months. Selling on benefits. We talked about the USP. Your staff need to know what the benefits are of your product or service, and that is what they sell on. And if they can do that, they'll never have to discuss price. Timely follow-up. This is a really obvious one. Virtually everybody in business leaves money on the table because they do not follow up with connections and prospects in a timely manner. How often have we met somebody who we think could be quite a good client, but because there isn't a deadline associated it, because it's an action that we have to take and nobody's shouting at us, it's 2 or 3 weeks before we finally get round to them. And of course, by that time, they may have gone to somebody else. And then finally on that list, having a clearly spelt out company vision, a mission statement, and a set of values. If you don't have a set of values, you need to have one, because not only does it enable you to have a better team, if your team know what your values are, if they know how you want them to work, we call it the rules of the game, then they will work in that way and they will deliver excellent client customer service, etc. But also, a prospective client looking at your website or looking at your material that you send out when you send out a proposal, if your values are in there, they can look at them and think, wow, actually, I love these values. I want to work with a company that has these values. Number of transactions. How do you get people to buy from you more frequently? Better service. Keeping in contact. I mentioned the database. Having membership or loyalty schemes. Any ladies on the call will be familiar with this. Rebook the next visit. If you go to a hairdresser, if they've got any common sense, they will not let you leave without booking your next visit into the calendar. Maintaining a database so that you can actively cultivate your prospects and your clients. Product of the week, product of the month, special offers. Having service contracts, so you tie people into a particular number of purchases on a frequent basis, but they probably get a better price as a consequence. Increasing your product range. Every business, it doesn't matter what sector you're in, what you do, you need to have a product range. Because if there is only one product at one price, your prospective client might decide to go and look at somebody else to see what their prices are. If you have 3 products at 3 different price points, they don't need to go elsewhere. And typically, the middle range product and price will be the one that most people buy, probably 80% of your customers. The top one, probably 15% buy. But when they do, it's fantastic because the profit margin is much higher on that product. And then finally, you've got a lower priced one, which not many people buy, but perhaps they want it as a taster, or perhaps they don't have a lot of money at the time. But always have a range of products, because if you have a range of prices, they don't have to go and ask somebody else to see theirs. Average value. How do we increase the average value of each of these transactions? Again, get your salesman to use a checklist, ask questions, make sure that you maximize the opportunity, create package deals, the sort of bog-offs and things like that. Maybe not something quite as crude as that, but create a package where the more things that they buy, the cheaper the overall basket price becomes. Incentivize your team. Do your salesmen have financial incentives or other forms of incentive to sell more? Customer incentives. A classic example is the local coffee shop. You take your little card in, they stamp it each time you buy a coffee, and when you've got 6 stamps on your thing, you get a free one. Ask people. And again, this is training for your sales team. Just ask people, is there anything else that you need? Do you need this on top of that? Now, typically when people buy one thing, they might need something else to go with it. They may not have it already. Ask them whether they need it. Have a minimum order amount. Make sure people know everything that you can sell, because if they don't know, they can't buy it. And then finally, a really easy way to increase the average value of your sales is to get rid of those really difficult customers that don't spend much money with you and you don't make a profit from because they take up so much of your time. Just stop servicing them. And your average value will immediately go up. So we've talked here about clarity and focus. There is one more. We've talked about 4 of the 5 ways. We've talked about leads, conversion rate, transactions, and average value. The last one is profit margin. The simplest way to increase your profit margin is to put your prices up. All of you should increase your prices on a regular basis. Now, inflation has been going up phenomenally over the last 4 or 5 years. I'll lay money that most of you have not increased your prices in line with inflation because you've been frightened to, because you're concerned about losing business. Actually, depending on what your profit margin is, you can work out how much your prices go up by and how many customers you would have to lose in order for you to not be making more profit than you were previously. So these are just some ideas for how to improve the number of leads, your conversion rate, the transactions, and the average value, and how to increase your profit margin. What I'm showing you here is a little spreadsheet. And what I've done is I've taken the numbers of that business we looked at earlier that had 4,000 leads. It converted 25% of those leads into customers. So it had 1,000 customers. They spent £100 on average twice a year. So we had £200,000 of net sales. And they had a profit margin of 25% and a gross profit of £50,000. Now, if you take 3 or 4 of the tactics that I have described to you this afternoon, or indeed any of the 500 plus strategies that I am going to send to you by email after this, provided I have your email address. So Ben, you need to send it to me because I don't think we've got your email address. We will send you a PDF chart with 500 plus different strategies on. If you can improve the number of leads coming in by 15%, just by actively communicating with your prospects, sending out newsletters, asking for referrals, all of the things we've talked about, your leads go up to 4,600. If we increase your conversion rate by 15%, that goes up to 28.8%. And now we have 1,323 customers instead of 1,000. And if we can find a 15% improvement in our average sale value, so that goes up to £115, the number of transactions goes up to 2.3 instead of 2. All of a sudden, we've put £150,000 onto the revenue, an increase of 75%. And if we can also find a 15% improvement in our profit margin, our gross profit goes up by 101% to £100,000. So that is how you can double your profits simply by applying 25 new marketing tactics or sales tactics in your business. And some of you are probably thinking at this point in time, whoa, 100% increase in profit, that seems like an awful lot. Could I really do 15%? Well, I can tell you, even if you only increased all of these figures by 10%, your profit would still grow by 61%. And I can assure you it is not that difficult, but the secret is focus. Once you understand these 5 areas, once you know what your own numbers are in terms of these 5 areas, then you can come up with tactics to grow them. And the thing is, once you've implemented those tactics, you've baked that increase in. And you then go through this process every 6 months or every 12 years, every 12 months, whatever is most appropriate for you. And you revisit it and you look at new tactics. And if you go through this process, if you were just to look for a 10% improvement every year in each of these 5 areas, if you did that consistently and found a 10% improvement each year for 5 years, your profit margin would increase by 1,000%. So it's about understanding why these areas are important focusing on them and applying tactics that you can use in your business. I'm going to wrap up now because we've taken 50 minutes and I don't want to bump into the hour. Jim Rohn, he was one of the most famous sort of business philosophers in the sort of 80s, 90s, noughties. And if you haven't read his book, 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness, then I strongly recommend that you do. He said, never wish that your life were easier, wish that you were better. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And that second one is really important. You cannot grow your business if you are not growing yourself. By definition, you cannot do new things. You cannot do things differently if you are not learning. So work harder on yourself than you do on your job, because the more that you learn, the more knowledge you acquire, the more skills you gain, the easier it is then to grow your own business. Brad Sugars, who's the founder of Action Coach, said, where you'll be in 5 years will depend on the books you read, the people you associate with, and the actions you take. And I just want to pick that apart very slightly. The reason he says the books you read is because he actually met Jim Rohn when he was a teenager. He was a very precocious teenager. I think he's still a very precocious individual. If you come across him, he asked Jim Rohn at a conference that he'd attended where Jim Rohn was speaking, and he hung around to talk to him, how can I be as successful as you? And Jim Rohn said to him, read a book a week for the rest of your life. And Brad Sugars has done that. He reads at least one book every single week. And he is a multi-millionaire. The people you associate with. I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about the comfort zone. We tend to become the average of the people with whom we spend the majority of our time. So if you spend your time mixing with people who are less ambitious with you, who don't like getting out of their comfort zone, who don't have any goals for themselves personally or indeed for their businesses if they're a business owner, then you need to get some new friends, because otherwise they're all going to be struggling to be as good as you. You want to be struggling to be as good as the best person in your network. So think about who you associate with. Do they inspire you? Do they bring you up? Because if they don't, why are you mixing with them? And then finally, actions. You cannot achieve anything if you do not take action. And my final note is about planning. If you work with me as one of my clients, you will know that we have a 12-month planning cycle. We do 5-yearly plans, 12-month plans. We do 90-day plans, which is the backbone of moving your business forward. But actually, the most important plan you can ever make is the daily plan. If you are not doing this, you need to start doing it. Before you finish work at the end of each day, make a plan for what you're going to do the following day. This is the secret to working effectively and efficiently. Make a plan. Eat the frog first thing in the morning. And if you are not making a daily plan, think about how you turn this into a habit. What do you need to do in order to make sure that you write the plan for the following day before you finish work the day before? And finally, another quote from Jim Rohn, which I always think is very thought-provoking. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Failure is not a single cataclysmic event. You don't fail overnight. Instead, failure is a few errors in judgment repeated every day. So if you have got bad habits, if there are things that you know that you should be doing that you're not doing, stop. You need to create those few simple disciplines that you implement every single day, and that will drive you to success. And the daily plan is a classic example of that. I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you very much for coming along. I hope that you've taken something out of this. If we have your contact details, we will be sending you out some material after this, which I think you'll find useful. And I'm just going to ask each of you now, before we finish, what is your biggest learning from today? What is your biggest learning from today? Either unmute yourself, don't be embarrassed, and tell me, or else put it into the chat.
Hey Justin, it's Adrian.
Yes.
Just to start things off, I think my big takeout is just to remind me to get a regular discipline across the whole of the team.
Good. Yep. Anyone else? June has put in action, action, action. Great. Thank you, June. Andrew, Ian, or Ben, would any of you care to share your biggest learning from this session? Okay. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending. I hope you found it useful. And just to let you know, for those of you that are local, we're doing a seminar in Aylesbury on the 13th of February, which is all about steps to transform your business. We are doing a webinar on the 24th of February on the 7 keys to creating a winning team. We have our next quarterly planning workshop. This is an all-day event at the Holiday Inn Aylesbury on Friday the 13th of March. Don't worry about the date. And then we are doing a webinar on mental resilience for business owners about your mindset on the 24th of March. And we're doing a webinar on time management on the 21st of April. All of these you'll find on the events page on my website. And I do hope to see some of you there. But in the meantime, thank you very much.